When are NFL teams going to start learning their lesson and stop paying mediocre quarterbacks or average quarterbacks big time money in a league where it is a significant competitive advantage to have a quarterback on a rookie deal and then be able to build the roster around them? It is foolishness and madness to pay elite, somewhat elite, not quite elite, but still $20+ million a year to a non-elite, non-franchise quarterback. You talk about tying up well over 10% of your yearly cap space into a guy that's not going to be the type of guy that you win a bunch of games because of. You might be able to win some games with them, but ultimately when it's nut-cutting time, you don't win games because of them on a consistent basis. And in spite of some of the playoff heroics of the past 2 years, Nick Foles is an average NFL quarterback. And you look at the Minnesota Vikings as a perfect example of the dangers of this. Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Nick Foles, period. This cannot even be a conversation. And yet I'm sure it's still going to happen in the comments on this video. The Minnesota Vikings paid an above-average starter elite money when they had, in theory, a Super Bowl nucleus around said guy. They rolled the dice, and their reward in 2018 was missing the playoffs. That's what happened. And they were paying, yes, more money, but to a better quarterback. And don't get it twisted. Kirk Cousins is a better NFL quarterback than Nick Foles, period. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that the Jaguars are back to being the Jaguars again and making yet another dumb dick move at the quarterback position. It's one thing to be massive morons and overreach for Blake Bortles with the 3rd overall pick in 2014. It's yet another thing after 4 years of maddeningly inconsistent, mediocre to bad play to get fooled by a little bit of a hot streak that really wasn't all that hot just because you made the AFC Championship game. You want to pay, again, big money to a mediocre quarterback. And how did that work out in 2018? So instead of learning your lesson and say, hey, just because we screwed up on this young quarterback doesn't mean that we automatically screw up on the next young quarterback, and let's build a team more in line with how the modern NFL is kind of trending, especially when you don't have an elite guy like a Brady, like a Breeze, like a Rodgers, like a Big Ben, somebody like that. They decide to double down, and the Jaguars go and give Nick Foles a shit ton of money for a guy that 2+ years ago was almost retired, thinking about going back to school to get his degree in theology or whatever the fuck. I guess he was saying his prayers. Praise God! Because he's got a lot of biblical reasons to love playing in Jacksonville. 4 years, $88 million. A little over $50 million guaranteed the first 2 years. And perhaps the single most idiotic thing we heard, and I totally actually believe this, it was put out there by Mike Garafolo talking about why the Jaguars, without any other real stiff competition out there in the marketplace, bid against themselves and gave Nick Foles this much goddamn money, said, in part, that the Jaguars were trying to make it clear that Nick Foles was their guy, giving him the confidence that it was his team, his locker room, his show. What a dumb, dick, moronic thing to do for a team that back in 2017 was a fourth quarter collapse away in Foxborough in the AFC Championship game from going to the Super Bowl. I could see if this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and the Cleveland Browns said, hey, based off of the market conditions at the time, Drew Brees is a free agent. We need to change the entire culture of our organization. The Saints are offering him $22 million a year. We're going to implode this fucking market, going to explode this fucking market, and we're going to offer him $28 or $30 million a year. Even though nobody's bidding close to that. The difference being is the Browns at that time are the skid marks of the National Football League. The single biggest thing they needed above all else was that franchise-changing quarterback. You can make a justification in that type of case. And while you can say, yes, the Jaguars have had a need for a long time for a quarterback, this is a team that's supposed to be, in theory, close to championship contending that imploded in 2018. And Nick Foles is not that type of dude. You are now paying big-time money, and I'm sorry, even though it's not top 5 or 6 in the league money, $22 million a year average adjusted value or average annual value. $50 million guaranteed over 2 years, which means $25 million per guaranteed in the first 2. You're paying them damn near elite money. And all the while, you're bringing him in a guy that had a couple of stretches of some hot streaks of nice games, but has lots of other mediocre to crappy play and some other average play in his career. All the while bringing him into a situation in Jacksonville that he doesn't have an Alshon Jeffrey, a Nelson Aguilar, a Golden Tate at wide receiver. He doesn't have a Zach Ertz and a Dallas Goedert at tight end. He doesn't have that really good Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. In Jacksonville, he's got none of that. So you're paying him based off of a small sample size of past performance in a different situation where he had superior, vastly superior talent around him. If this doesn't scream dumb dick move, I don't know what the F does. And if you say, well, maybe the Jaguars weren't impressed with any of the quarterbacks in this year's draft. Okay, that's fine. That is a bit of a conundrum. But how much do you think Nick Foles is going to really move the needle? And then on top of that, to feel the stupidity of bidding against yourself to try and make a statement. The bottom line is if Nick Foles comes in and plays well, that's the statement that's made. The fact that you felt like you had to overpay for him to the level that you did suggests to me the insecurity about whether Nick Foles is really the damn guy for you. And furthermore, why the hell you would ever want to give him that contract to begin with? The Jaguars are right back to being the Jaguars again. This is so stupid. I mean, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to get big years out of a Marquise Lee because he'll finally magically stay healthy? D.D. Westbrook will explode? I mean, give me a damn break here. Nick Foles is not a scrub. Nick Foles is not a bum. If this was like a 1-year, $25 million deal, or you literally said it was 2 years, $40 million, and you front-loaded it in year 1, that's one thing. It's dumb. It goes against the recent history of the NFL, especially paying big money to quarterbacks at free agency that aren't Hall of Famers like Drew Brees or especially Peyton Manning. I get it. But none of these factors really come into play. The truth is Nick Foles is an average quarterback, and teams that overpay for average quarterbacks end up paying the price. What the hell makes you think the Jaguars are going to be any different here?